Pica Poco Kitchen. Today we're making homemade, very homemade paleta payaso. Vámonos! On April 30th in Mexico, we celebrate Children's Day, a day full of activities, fun, and candy. So I decided to bring to you one of our classic candies, Paleta Payaso, or Clown Lolly. I got the inspiration from a content creator that I found recently on Instagram. You can find him as Cocinando con Peña. I'll leave his handle over there. Go check him out. He recreates candies and treats from Mexico, and he has great Spanish content, so go give him a follow. Paleta Payaso has been around forever, since I remember at least. They were born in the 1970s. They recently celebrated their 50th anniversary. It is so simple, just marshmallow covered in chocolate with gummy, eyes, and mouth. And that is our favorite part. Not exactly because of the gummies, but because they famously have a very flexible and lax quality control. So as soon as you open your candy, you never know what kind of clown you're gonna get. I recently found a drawing by Taquito Jocoque that illustrates what I mean perfectly. But we love them for that, and we don't want them to change. So to have a little bit of childish wonder, I decided to go from scratch. And it was a fun ride, and I hope you have fun too. So, let's go. I'm gonna start by making some gummies with a very simple recipe. And because I like my gummies on the sour side, I'm gonna hydrate my gelatin in lime juice. I'm using a third of a cup of lime juice. If you prefer them sweeter, you may use lemon or just water. I'll be adding 2 envelopes of 0.23 ounces each of gelatin. Give that a mix and set aside, allowing the gelatin to bloom. For the mouth, I'll be using strawberry. I have 1 cup of cut strawberries that I'm gonna take into my blender and then pass through a sieve right on top of my pot. This way, your gummies will have the nicest texture. You can sweeten your gummies however you like, but I go for classic 3 tablespoons of sugar. Of course, you can do less. Bring to a boil to make sure the sugar is dissolved. At this point, we can turn off the heat and add our bloomed gelatin. With the residual heat, it will dissolve. Make sure to give it a nice stir, and you're ready for your molds. I'll be using a donut shape for the mouth. I'll be cutting it in half, and I'm helping myself with this little dropper that came with the mold. I got them from Amazon a long time ago, but you can get them almost anywhere. And don't worry too much about the shape or color of the gummies. Traditionally, it has round blue eyes and half a circle red mouth, but you can use whatever you want. While these ones chill in the fridge for around 2 hours, let's move on to the eyes. I'll start the exact same way by hydrating my gelatin in lime juice. Once again, a third of a cup of lime juice and 2 packs of unflavored gelatin. For the ice gummies, I'm going for blackberries. I have 1 cup of blackberries that I'm gonna take to my blender and then once again pass through a sieve on my pot in the stove. I'll add 3 tablespoons of sugar and bring to a boil to dissolve. Then once again with the heat off, I'm gonna add my bloomed gelatin and mix it until dissolved. And for the eye, since I don't have a circle mold, I'm gonna use these paw prints. Because why not? And to the fridge they go until set. And here they are after a couple of hours. I recommend putting them in a tray and let them air out. If you can overnight, that would be even better. I also made some strawberry spicy gummies, but I'll put that in a little short. And now the marshmallow. I'm not a big fan of making marshmallow, but today I made an exception. So I'm gonna start with a third of a cup of cold water, and there I'm gonna dissolve 2 envelopes of 0.23 ounces each of unflavored gelatin. Give that a mix, and you guessed it, we'll let it bloom. And now we need to move on to make a sugar syrup. For that, I'm gonna use 1.5 cups of sugar plus a third of a cup of water. I'll be taking this to the stove because I have better control of temperature, and in this stage it is very important. First, I'm gonna bring it to a boil to make my simple syrup where the sugar is completely dissolved and it looks clear like this. Now I'm gonna take it back to the stove until it reaches a 230 Fahrenheit. This is called the thread stage because if I were to drop some of this in cold water, long threads will form. Bubbles like this are a visual indicator that you've reached that temperature, but it is important to use a thermometer as well. When we reach that point, we need to work fast. Remove it from the stove and add your gelatin to dissolve. Now, having your mixer ready with a whisk attachment, pour your syrup and gelatin into the bowl and start whisking. Start with medium speed and then increase as you see it come together. I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. You'll see it go from clear to white with the introduction of air. You will notice as well if you touch the bowl that the temperature goes down. While that happens, I'm gonna mix a quarter of a cup of powdered sugar plus a quarter of a cup of cornstarch to dust all over the mold that I'll use to set my marshmallow on. Originally, I was planning to use these, I believe it's 9 by 13, but since my marshmallow was less of the amount that I was expecting, I ended up using this 6 by 8 glass container. I'm also using parchment paper. You can use wax paper. This will help you to unmold when it's time. So I'm gonna let it sit in the fridge for around 2 hours as well. When it's time to unmold, make sure to have that mixture of sugar and cornstarch ready and sprinkle it all over the place on top of your marshmallow and the surfaces that are going to be in contact with it. That way you are able to touch and handle without getting things stuck to each other. I'll flip my marshmallow in my silicone mold and I'll use circle cutters to cut the shapes, but if you want to be wiser, I recommend to do what Peña does in his video. He pipes the marshmallow using a piping bag into circles from the beginning. So that way you are able to use more of the marshmallow mix instead of having remnants of the cuttings as you will see me do. I was able to cut 2 circles with my 3.5 cutter and 3 circles with my 2-inch cutter. If you want to be wiser, you can use a piping bag like Peña does in his video to make the circles from the beginning. But I was happy because I got some remnants that I got to enjoy. For covering my paletas, I'm going the easy route. I am just melting 1 cup of chocolate chips over a double broiler, but you can of course use candy melts or even tempered chocolate if you're feeling fancy. Now I'm gonna get some screwers and stick them into my little lollies and set them in the fridge for a little while I get my chocolate ready. I will also get my gummies ready. I'm cutting the donuts in half for the mouths. I'm gonna be using the paws for the eyes on the big ones, and for the little ones I'm gonna be using the paws as well, but I think I'm gonna remove the toes just to make them a little bit smaller. Feel free to use whatever method you want to cover your lollies. My chocolate was pretty dense, so I basically used a spatula to brush the chocolate all over them. If you want a more even looking coverage, then probably candy melts is going to be your best option. Using chocolate chips won't give you the most even or pretty looking lollies, but definitely you'll get an intense chocolate flavor. And that's what I was going for. For the little ones, I just gave them a brush and then a dunk into the chocolate. Nothing fancy here, just a fork and my spatula to brush off the excess. And while the chocolate is still warm, I'm gonna add here my gummies. I dust them in sugar and then with my eyes closed, keeping on with the tradition, I'm gonna try to get the face however it lands. The first one was truly a lucky hit because as you can see for the second one, I could barely even hit the lolly itself. So yeah, there you have it. It was really fun. Of course, you can fit them right and you don't have to make your own gummies. Use whatever gummies you can get or any shapes that you like. Flavor and color is gonna be all up to you. And after a bunch of trial and error on assembling the faces, this is how they ended up looking. I think they are adorable. But of course, before we can enjoy them, we need to let them sit in the fridge once more. Making this candy made me think of my own childhood. I had a good childhood, and I love sharing memories with you. My parents worked really hard to give my sister and I everything that we needed. We didn't have a lot of luxuries, but we definitely had a good childhood. I was lucky to be born in the country that I was born. I was lucky to have the community around me that I had. I was lucky to be born at the time when I was born. Unfortunately, a lot of kids today aren't as lucky as you and I. A lot of kids today are being pulled apart from their families. A lot of kids today are dying in their land when going to school. A lot of kids today are dying in hospitals from war-inflicted wounds. A lot of kids today have to leave the place where they were born and find refuge in a different country with a different culture and a different language. A lot of kids today are dying in detention centers because they don't have access to the care that they need. I thought it would be silly for me to share these with the very few followers that I had, but I realized that it is not about the size of my platform, but how big the problem is. Today, if we're not looking at the problem, it's not because it's hidden behind a bush. It is because we're choosing to look aside. And I decided that I'm not going to be one of those. I'm sharing with you today in a QR code and on the box down below a petition that if you have 2 minutes to sign, that would be enough. It is a petition to close the Dilley Detention Center in Texas, where a lot of babies, toddlers, kids, and pregnant women are held in inhospitable conditions. I know that today, when we're all barely going by, it is difficult to donate. Donation is not necessary. You can skip that part, but signing and sharing that petition may have the impact to help these kids make the memories that you and I were lucky to make today. If you're still here so far, I thank you. I hope you enjoyed this recipe just like this video. And if you did, please sign and share the petition. Like, subscribe, and be notified. And for more, follow me on the socials.